welcome to Life Updates with Cass. Today's featured guest is Blake. Woo! So as you remember, I'm Cass, the program coordinator. Program coordinator for LearningFuze, and this is Blake. Blake, please introduce yourself.
Hi everyone, my name's Blake Ross. I was a student at LearningFuze. I was in cohort 120, January 20th. Before I decided to enroll in LearningFuze, I took a few of the prep courses that LearningFuze offers, and I did that from about November to December, just a few part-time courses, HTML, CSS fundamentals, JavaScript fundamentals. And then after that process, I decided to join the bootcamp full-time, and that was my cohort, was cohort 120.
Nice. So what do you do now?
So I've already completed the program that ended it was end of March, but then it got pushed to the beginning of April because of COVID. So LearningFuze was kind enough to extend our class an extra week. And post-process has been actually really enjoyable. I mean, when during the program, I mean, you know, you're always swamped with projects that are being assigned, you know, classwork that needs to get done, you know, lots of activity, you know, your involvement in the school is very, very high anytime you're in a fully immersive environment. So now that you're outside of the program, I mean, you really got to take it upon yourself to keep that drive and hunger there. So what I've been focusing on is, you know, mainly the interview process, you know, working on, you know, some of the technical questions that you could be asked, and then very much the coding challenges. I mean, I think it's super vital to, you know, be able to pass a tech assessment. So that's kind of how I've focused on, you know, my post-graduation time, because I think LearningFuze does a great job of preparing the students with their resumes and their applications to have a portfolio. So I feel like they're preparing the students to get those interviews, and I think the school does a great job of that. And I think that the missing piece of the puzzle that, you know, really is up to the students is really how dedicated you are to, you know, practicing the interviews, the soft skill questions, and, you know, and then obviously the technical coding challenges that you're going to have to pass in order to get your first developer job.
Nice. So what brought you to web development, coding, tech industry, all that good stuff?
Yeah, that's a great question, Cass. So I majored in business marketing from Cal State Fullerton. I had every intention of, you know, working in the corporate world, the business world. You know, once I graduated in 2015, I had this opportunity to work directly with my dad at a seafood company. They're an importer of shrimp, and I had that job for a very long time. But during my time in Fullerton, I had this part-time job at Finish Line where I sold sneakers. And, you know, I quickly acquired this rare taste for sneakers, and they were always released online. And it was always a struggle. Like, it would be so frustrating, you know, to try and buy a pair of shoes that I could just never get. They just always sold out instantly. And I discovered they were always getting sold out to automated checkout software. So I did some research, and I was like, okay, this is what's going on. This is why I can't get the shoes that I want. So then I was like, okay, I realized that I had to partake. So I like purchased some automated software and just was playing around with it, and it helped me get shoes. And I was just so fascinated by it. So I was like, oh, like, this is so cool. Like, not like it helped me get the shoes that I wanted. It was like something that was like totally aligned with like my interests of like sneakers. I'm like a very big sneaker person. You know, obviously that started from working at the shoe store. And then, so sometime after, you know, I graduated, I took a summer class at my local community college and, you know, doing Python. And ever since then, I mean, I was hooked. I mean, even though I was very successful in my career, I just like, it just wasn't, you know, a huge passion of mine. And like, I just knew that after that summer class that I wanted to pursue this in a full-time environment.
Oh, very nice. So what was your most memorable moment / highlight during LearningFuze?
The most memorable moment or highlight? That's a great question. I think the most rewarding part of the program is once you get to the very end, because it is obviously a full immersion boot camp, so you really get to see your growth and development, and you really don't realize how much you've accomplished until you get to the very end, when you start wondering like, oh wow, we did 2 hackathons. I mean, we did 3 projects. I mean, you're like, oh wow, like, I learned all these packages, these frameworks, these languages. Like, I feel like, and when you get to the very end is when you realize the accumulation of your knowledge, and to show that on a final project, and to work with your peers. I mean, that was my favorite part of the program. I mean, I couldn't have been more happy with how our final projects came out. I mean, it really was like just an amazing accumulation of what we had learned. So I think the very end, for me, I mean, like presenting our final projects was definitely my favorite.
That's good. I know. I really like that part too, because honestly, it's so amazing. You start out with just like this existing knowledge you currently started with, and then you continue to build on more and build on more, and it accumulates to this beautiful. Oh yeah. So I kind of like relating to my quote from when you looked at my LinkedIn. It was the butterfly. When y'all turn into butterfly.
Yes. It's a great analogy. It really is. I mean, it's when like in the first half of the program, I mean, I think TJ had a wonderful lecture too in the beginning where, I believe it was the first week or one of the first, kind of speeches he gives or talks, and he was explaining that, like, how many of you raise your hand if you feel like a developer, and nobody ever raises their hand in the beginning because you're in this new water, you don't really feel like you're that confident in your skills. And he explained to us very early that we're all developers. We're all in this together. We all know some fundamentals, and to see us like go from that kind of confidence to like presenting these fully polished final projects, I mean, that it's really cool to see.
Yes, honestly, it's so true. So, what I know, like you have I feel like your soft skills, like your communication skills, are really on point. So,
Thank you.
what advice do you give to someone who, I guess, is in the job search process as well?
Advice to people that are in the job search process.
Or
Well,
even those who are, yeah, hold on. Let's start off with a job search process. Yes.
okay.
Yeah.
So the job search process, I mean, um, that's what I'm doing right now. I'm searching for a full-time job. I have found some freelance work, and I'm doing that. But the goal is still to get a full-time job. And my advice for those people that are searching for full-time work, I mean, for starters, I think the best plan of attack is to identify companies that you want to work for, companies that align with your interests, companies that have a good culture that you would be interested in. And then from there, once you've identified, companies that you would want to work for, I mean, I would put in extra work if like while you're trying to get within these companies, right? So that includes trying to connect with people on LinkedIn, seeing if you have any hobbies or any sort of things that align with their interests, so that you have something to talk about with these people, learn about the company, all of the details. What are they working on? What are their goals? How can you help? Because you're going to have to provide value to these companies, right? I mean, there's going to be, if it's a good company, which it probably is, there's going to be lots of developers applying for their job, and you have to find a way to separate yourself. So, I mean, if it's work at a company you really want, you're going to have to do that extra to try and get that job. So, I mean, there's no better reason if you like the company and you think it's a dope company, you want to work for them. I mean, you should be doing the most, and that includes going to, their LinkedIn, finding people that have roles that you want, and asking them questions. Ask them questions about the interview process. And like I said, see if you have anything that aligns with them. If you notice that they have a picture of a hiking trail, reach out to them and be like, oh my God, I love to hike too. I mean, have you been to this trail? Have you been to that trail? Have you taken this trip? This was such an amazing experience. Find ways to connect with people. And that would be my advice to them. I mean, and just some more fundamental things other than that. I mean, I would just say that if you need to constantly apply for jobs, because it's a numbers game. So keep applying for jobs, keep track of what companies you're applying for. And then also, you know, you gotta always be practicing coding challenges, because to me it's a 3-step process. It's the resume and getting the interview. It's getting the interview. It's, you know, the soft skills during the interview. They want to check, okay, does this person align with our culture? And then the last but not least is being able to pass a tech assessment, because at the end of the day, these are developer jobs, and you're going to have to be able to pass a tech assessment. And that includes, you know, whatever coding challenges they might throw at you. I would say that you probably want that to be that in my opinion, the soft skills and being able to communicate and align with the company, and the tech assessment, I mean, those are by far the 2 most important things, in my opinion, in the job search process.
That's good. Awesome. I really love that. And then what is also a piece of advice for someone who's in a coding boot camp, and what should they do to make sure they just succeed?
Well, if you've decided to do a coding boot camp, you've already made this huge commitment, right? It's a lot of money. You know, you have to sacrifice. If you're working, you pretty much have to stop working.
Mm-hmm.
So you're sacrificing this large chunk of time. I mean, you know, boot camps, they're these full immersion things where you show up all the time, you drop everything, and you just do the thing. You're getting all the benefits of, you know, being dedicated to a craft, and doing only that is the most effective way of learning. And then you get to combine that with the project building, which is part of the reason why I love boot camps so much, is because I think that it combines the 2 most effective ways of learning, which includes just fully immersing yourself, and then the projects. Because I think if you build things that you're passionate about, you're going to learn the most, you're going to be the most engaged. And my advice to these people are, you know, don't skip out on the time. You know, I know from my experience that there's going to be people in your class, they might be smarter than you. They might be picking up things quicker, and you might get frustrated when you're not learning things as quickly as you might think you should be. And the only thing that you can control is the time that you put in. You know, I call it time in the chair, right? The more time you spend in the chair, the better it's going to be for you, right? So I mean, I wouldn't call these I mean, they're not 8-hour things. I mean, it's an all the time thing, because you're making this huge switch in your life. So you want to be as dedicated as you can to the craft.
Yes.
I mean, there's so many variables that go into it. And if you're spending the most amount of time that you possibly can, I think that you're just going to get the most benefits. I don't really think there's another analogy that I could think of that would be better than that. I mean, I really do believe that, you know, the more time you spend in the chair, you're going to get that skill. It's going to come, you know, because LearningFuze has you covered with the curriculum. They got you covered with the portfolio process. They're gonna help you along the way. They have a very regimented. Any good boot camp is gonna have a regimented thing to get you to the point of, I'm a hireable candidate.
Yeah.
But you're gonna have to do the work, time in the chair, practicing, developing, learning. And that's the only thing that you can control. I mean, like I said, LearningFuze has a great curriculum. They have a fantastic curriculum. And if you just follow instructions, you're going to get to the promised land. But what's going to separate you from the other candidates is your work ethic. It's that simple. I mean, you might not be the smartest person in the class. You know, you might feel like you're slacking in terms of like the content, but the more time you spend in the chair, I promise you, you're gonna reap some serious benefits.
Wow, give it up for Blake here. Look at that. Great. That was so good. I love that. Oh my gosh, that was good. Thank you again for joining us. All right, thanks again for tuning in to
Life Updates with Cass.